Straight
Why context is everything in communication. Now, if you have been listening to my material for any amount of time, you have heard me over and over and over again emphasize and re-emphasize and overemphasize the value of communication skills. Three forms of communication: spoken word, speaking either to an individual person; spoken word, speaking to a group; and the written word. These three forms of communication must be mastered because they are paramount to your future success, regardless of what you do. You could be an athlete, you could be an engineer, you can be a librarian, you could be a dog walker. Your ability to communicate is going to determine how far you can go with other people and how far you could go professionally. So today we're going to be talking about communication skills and why the context of your communication means a lot. So first, let's get a clear definition of this, because I like to define terms that I'm talking about to make sure that we're all on the same page so everybody knows where I'm coming from. So when I get to where I'm going, you understand the exact route that I took to get there. Speaking of communication. So the definition of context is the circumstances that form the setting for an event, statement, or idea, and in terms of which it can be fully understood and assessed. Close quote. Everybody got that? Should I say that one more time? Let me say it one more time. Make sure you got it. Context is the circumstances that form the setting for an event, statement, or idea, and in terms of which it can be fully understood and assessed. That's what context means. Context, my theory for today, or the argument that I'm going to make, an argument I'm making right now and that I'm going to defend through today's episode, is that context is the key to making any communication. Context is the key to any communication. Regardless of how the communication is, regardless of how it is meant to get across, and let me say that one more time. Context is the key to making any communication, regardless of what it is, how to get it across, how to make it land with its intended target. All right, that's what context is about. In other words, the right message with the wrong context will miss its mark, meaning somebody might hear it, but they don't quite get it. Or people hear it and they get it, but they're the wrong people, not even the people who you were trying to communicate to. This is why context matters so much. And one of the biggest mistakes or gaps that I see in people's communication these days is that they fail to fill in proper context while only sharing content. Content is what you want to say. Context is how you say it and the circumstances around what you say. Without the context, content can be easily misunderstood or just can completely miss its mark, which kind of is the same thing. So let's get clear on context, what exactly it means. Point number one. Today's topic, once again, is why context is everything in communication. Number one, the exact same material presented in a different context lands very differently with the exact same person or the exact same audience. The exact same material presented in a different context can produce completely different results. I'll give you an example of this. I'll give you several examples. Number one, I do a live stream, at least as of this recording. I do a live stream every weekday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern. You can catch it on whatever social media platform you prefer. I'm live on all of them: YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Rumble, X, TikTok, and Instagram. All of them at the same time. I'm giving the exact same presentation I got a bunch of cameras looking at me all at the same time and saying the exact same things. They're all saying the same thing. I get way more people watching me on TikTok than on all the other applications put together, even though it's the exact same presentation all happening at the same time, the exact same words, the exact same everything. And I'm not recording it at different times. I'm recording them all at once. I get way more people on TikTok. Today I did a live stream on TikTok. Let me see if I can pull up the stats from TikTok today. So on TikTok today, I'm going over to the live recordings. This one that I did this morning, that's not what I want. I just want the stats. Where is it? TikTok has a lot of information in their back end. So let's see if I can try to find it. All right, your live recap, what they're offering me here. So the live recap of what I did today, this morning. No, this is the week. I need the live recap for the day. But even a live recap for the day is giving me some healthy information. Scale live rewards. No, not this. Live events. Let's see if this is it. No, that's not it. Okay, so TikTok is not giving me the information that I'm looking for here. But I remember seeing it this morning. Yeah, I don't see it right here. Live, here, Live analytics in the last 28 days. That's not what I'm looking for either. No, not this. No, not that. Anyway, let me just pull up the image because I know I took a picture of it earlier today. So on TikTok just this morning when I did my live stream, let me go back and find the image. My live stream on TikTok this morning, 6,000 viewers, 17 people gave me gifts, which is like little kudos you can give to people when you like their live streams, 48 new followers, all just in the midst of a 90-minute live stream that I did just this morning. And between all the other applications put together while I was doing a live stream, TikTok, 6,000 people, I had less than 100 people total, all the other apps put together. At least that I can see. I don't always see the stats because I can't look at all the cameras at the same time, but way more on TikTok than all the other platforms, even though the content is exactly the same. So what does this have to do with my point here? First point is that the context. The context of doing it on TikTok changes the results. Why? If I could quite figure that out, then I would crack the code and use it on all the other apps too. I don't know. But the context changes. Same way that if I was to take everything I'm saying here in today's episode and I was to write this all out as a long form article that might be 10,000 words long, many of you would not read that article, but you would listen to this episode, even though the content would be exactly the same. Because some people just don't like to read that much. And there's some of you who will read if I wrote that 10,000 word article, but you wouldn't listen to this episode. You're probably not listening right now. So let's just say, for example, because again, what we're talking about here is the exact same material presented in different contexts and lands completely differently with the exact same person or the exact same audience. Let's say that I came to you and told you that I just punched the guy in the face this morning. Let's just say I told you that. That's all I say. I punched somebody in the face this morning. If I told you that, well, what would you think? On its surface and without context, there's a lot of different ways you could interpret that statement. That can mean a lot of different things. Some of you may think that I'm just some crazy street thug walking around punching people in the face. Others may think that I got into an argument with somebody while standing in line at Walgreens. However, if I added the context that I was in a boxing gym and this happened in a boxing ring and I was sparring against somebody and the punch in the face was just a jab that I landed to their face when they started charging in on me because they landed a jab on me and I responded back with a jab, or maybe even better with a left hook, and that's how I punched them in the face. That context makes the content make a lot more sense. Because if I just told you I punched somebody in the face, you might think, again, I'm just running around as if I have no self-control, punching people in the face. If I tell you I punched somebody in the face because I was in a boxing ring sparring, then it makes perfect sense. No, you're like, oh, okay, now it makes sense. What changed? The content didn't change. The exact same content. All I changed was the context. The story around what I did and the story around why it happened. Because you understand in a boxing ring, you're supposed to punch people in the face. But if I don't give you that context, or somebody was talking about me and they maliciously removed the context and said, oh, well, hey, Floyd Mayweather, that guy over there, he just punches people in the face a whole bunch of times. He's a terrible guy. He just punches people in the face. But then if you get the context, he's a boxer. Okay, he's supposed to punch people in the face. You can paint a situation completely differently depending on how much context you leave in or that you leave out. You want to see an organization or an entity that has become expert at this, just watch the news. They can tell you content and then they put the context around it that can paint it to be whatever they want to paint it to be. Usually in the news industry, the saying is, if it bleeds, it leads. So anything that's going to get you emotionally engaged, that's the way they're going to tell it, whatever they need to do. So do you understand how context changes an entire story? Same way that people say something like our current president, Donald Trump, they say, at least as of this recording, he has 34 felony convictions. You hear people who are not fans of his say this over and over again. Technically, is that true? Yes, it is. Does he have 34 felony convictions? Yes, he does. But without the context of how exactly those convictions came to be, a person who doesn't know anything could be easily misled as to what type of person he is or what he must have done that led to that outcome. Most of the people who don't like him will not include any context. They'll just say 34 felony convictions. The fact is good enough for them. People who are defending him will say 34 felony convictions. However, how did he get them? What kind of process was used to get to them? And were these based on any real crimes committed? And was this person who prosecuted him really trying to get him for a crime, or were they just trying to advance their political agenda? I think advancing their political agenda meant getting him for a crime. So that context changes the whole story. So this is the reason why context matters so much. Because if you tell someone a story without the context, you're leaving it up to interpretation for them to see it however they want to see it, Or if you provide the context yourself, which may not even be true or real, you can influence a whole bunch of people just by giving them that frame of telling them what the context is without them deciding for themselves. And if you leave people to think for themselves, they're more likely to stumble across the reality or truth of the situation than if you tell them up front, hey, this is what you're about to see, then show it to them. All right, that's an easy way to mislead people, by the way. Social media, you'll see plenty of examples of people doing this all day, every day, taking things out of context, presenting it to someone else who doesn't know that there is context, and then telling you, hey, this is what happened without giving you a chance to think if that really happened or not. Critical thinkers have the ability to see through this nonsense, but most people are not critical thinkers. Point number 2. Today's topic, once again, is why context is everything in communications. Number 2, if your message is not landing and you are 100% sure that your message is good and useful, then the problem is not the material. The problem is not the receptivity of your audience. The problem is the context. So if you think your material is good and you know your material is good, but then you look around and see who's listening to your material and you see it's not nearly as many people as you thought it would be or that you believe it should be, your issue is not you need better content. The issue is you need better context. The context is off. That's the reason why people aren't getting the message. Remember what I told you in the first point. The context in which you put something determines how or if or when or where people receive it. The context in which you put something determines how, if, when, or where people receive it. And people are not all the same, by the way. Different individuals and different audiences have different responses to different contexts. Different individuals and different audiences have different responses to different contexts. There's an audience of people out there who love to read. They love to read books. So if you want to get a point across to these people, you can write a 150-page book. They will gladly buy the book and read it. Why? Because it's part of their identity to read books. So they like reading books. There's also an audience of people out there who don't read books, and they hate reading books, as a matter of fact. So if you put the most eloquent information in the world that those people need inside of a book, those people will never get that information because they are never going to pick up and read that book, no matter how pretty the cover is, no matter what knockout title you come up with. There are some people who simply don't read books. You will never sell that person a book. It's not going to happen. So if you put the most eloquent information in the world in that book, they ain't getting it. But those same people will happily watch a 45-minute YouTube video if you would just record it. Now, there's another group who will prefer to listen to what you had to say through audio. Now, they don't want to read it on a book. They don't want it to be a digital book. They don't want to listen. They don't want to watch it on YouTube. They just want to hear the audio because they can take that with them when they're jogging or when they're working out in the morning. They don't want to give the time to a book. They don't fire up YouTube videos because that requires your ears and your eyes, and they're occupied. So the context plays a huge role in whoever even has access to your message, let alone who gets your message. Now, everyone technically has access to books and YouTube and audio if they wanted to, but not everybody actively uses these things. So if they don't have that access, then they can't get the information. In the first point of this episode, I illustrated the idea using President Donald Trump and how a certain fact about him can be presented with or without context to paint a certain picture of him and what he's about. Now, there are some people listening to me right now who are happy that I used that context because they agree with the point that, yes, he does have 34 felony convictions, but how did he get those convictions? What was the process behind it? Was this a political witch hunt? Were they using it to try to stop him trying to run for office in 2024? I would say pretty much yes to all those questions, but that's just the way I see it. There are others of you listening to this now. You are disappointed that I used Donald Trump as context because you are repulsed by the mention of his name. You have been thus, what's the word we're looking for? Brainwashed to be repulsed by the mention of the guy's name. This is an example of what I'm saying here in point number 2. The exact same point, depending on the context I'm using to illustrate it, people can take the same point completely differently. And if we were all robots and not human, everyone would accept and appreciate the point the exact same way. If we were all robots and not human. However, humanity doesn't work this way. Every human has free will and they have freedom of thought to think whatever it is they want to think. And not everybody has to come to the same conclusion, even though we're all dealing with the same facts. Interpretations / context tells us who's who and what's what. Point number 3. Today's topic, once again, is why context is everything in communication. Number 3. Context is all about packaging. Context equals packaging. In other words, how did you deliver the message? Not did you deliver it, how did you deliver it? It's not just what you say, how you say it, where you say it, the energy you use to give it, who's receiving it, why they may be open to it or not, the style in which you get your point across. All of this is part of the context of what you said. In other words, everything other than actual content. This is the part that most human beings fumble with over and over again, because most humans are so connected to being right that you forget that the goal is to get your point across to land with your determined audience. That's the point of communication. Point of communication is not for people to agree with you. It's not for everyone to accept you. It's not for you to get a bunch of fans and followers. The point of communication is to get your point, whatever it may be, across to the people who need to hear it, regardless of how they feel about it. That's what communication is. And many people get so focused on being right and just proving their point that they forget what the goal was, landing with the audience. Perfect is subjective anyway. And again, the point of public speaking is that you want to make sure that your audience understands what you say. And if there's a subject or a subsequent, action that they could take based on what you have said, you can measure that by, again, how many people actually indeed take that action. How many people actually follow your call to action, or the CTA, as we say in copywriting. Politics, for example, is a good example of this. The point of public speaking in politics is not to give the best speech. I often hear people defer to this false frame when I mention something like, I mentioned Barack Obama and I mentioned Donald Trump, and I say they were both excellent public speakers. The reason we know they're both excellent public speakers is they took the biggest public speaking job in America, which is running for president, and they both won twice. That's a skill. So you want to make sure the audience understands your position and that they take the desired action, which is usually some form of voting in your favor, buying in your favor, etc. If you give an amazing speech, or you have an amazing speech and you win, no votes. Does the public speaking that you did, is it called successful? Say it again. If you give an amazing speech, but no one in the audience goes and votes for you, and you're running for office and you end up losing 2,700 votes to 0, did you succeed even with your amazing speech? The answer is no, you failed. If you give an amazing speech, but you don't get any votes, your public speaking has failed. All right, it's measurable in the political world. This is just the way it works. Remember that we're in a results-based business, ladies and gentlemen. The quality of your packaging is measured by the results of how your intended audience responds to your packaging, not just whether or not you personally feel good about it. If you're selling a house, for example, you hire a realtor to find you a buyer for $10 million, yet nobody wants to pay $10 million for your house, you got 3 effective options. One option, fire your realtor, as they clearly have not done any good job of finding the $10 million buyer for your house. Number 2, you can repackage what you're offering and present the house in a different way so that people do see $10 million worth of value in the home. Or number 3, you can reframe your idea how much you want for your house and accept the reality that maybe the best offer you will get will be $9 million. You're not going to get 10, you can get $9 million for the house. You had 3 choices here. All right. None of these choices is about forcing anything on anyone. It just changes in the way that you choose to look at yourself and look at your situation and how it could possibly empower you. Let's recap today's class, which is why context is everything in communication. Definition of context: the circumstances that form the setting for an event, statement, or idea, and in terms of which it can be fully understood and assessed. What exactly does context mean for conversation? Well, that's a great question. Number 1, the exact same material presented in a different context lands very differently with the exact same person or the exact same audience. What does that mean? I told you I punched the guy in the face this morning. On its surface and without context, it's like different ways you can interpret the statement, since you may think I'm just some crazy street thug. But if I tell you I was in a boxing ring or in an MMA cage and I punch somebody in the face, then it makes perfect sense. It's what you're supposed to do. Point number 2. If your message is not landing, but you're sure that the message actually has substance, because that's always in question, your problem is not your material, nor is it the receptivity of your audience. The problem is that the context is off. That's the reason why the message is not landing. So you have an audience full of people who are looking right at you and they want to hear what you have to say, and you talk for 5 minutes, none of them moves a muscle, and you're like, why are these people not responding? And then somebody whispers in your ear and says, well, the people in this audience are deaf. They can't hear. They're taking everything by what you have written down, and they're basically getting a real-time transcript of the things that you're saying. So they're probably so focused on reading that they don't even notice your joke, or they haven't caught up to your joke yet because you've been talking longer than this transcript's been running. So if your message is not landing, but you're sure it is good, your problem is not the material, your problem is not receptivity of the audience, your problem is the context. Your audience just doesn't have the proper context to understand what you're saying. And there's only so far you can go with people when they don't understand your context before you got to go on to something else. Number 3, context is all about packaging. Not just what you say, but how you say it, where you say it, the energy you use to give it, who's receiving it, why they may be open to it or not, which style in which you get your point across. All of this is part of the context of your communication. And all of this plays a bigger role. All that stuff put together plays a bigger role in how your content is received than anything else. Right? The context is everything because it gives people a picture of who you are and what you're about. And this is the part that most people fumble with over and over again because so many people are so connected to being right that you forget your goal is just getting your point across and land with the audience. Again, not just say whatever it is you want to say. These are not the same thing. So when I'm talking to my audiences and live streams, I often have to emphasize and further explain this point. Purpose of public speaking is not to just say whatever you want to say or to be perfectly eloquent in terms of having all the perfect words. The point of public speaking is to make sure your audience understands what you said, and if there is a subsequent action that could be taken based on what you said, you measure how many people indeed take that action. In politics, for example, you can measure it by votes. Not all public speaking has a measurable in this way, but in the places in which there is a measurable, you should take the measurable. So you can repackage what you're offering and present anything in a different way so that people can see a different level of value or just look at it in a different light. It's all about the context in which you put things. Change your context, change your outcomes. All this said, folks, I have a people skills course you can get access to at workonyourgameuniversity.com. By the time you hear this is definitely out. We call it the Academy, Work on Your Game Academy. We got the university and we got the Academy. So the Academy is where you get access to all of our courses. You can pick and choose which ones you want. All of that will be at workonyourgameuniversity.com by the time you hear this episode. We're 90% done with the landing page right now, so I know. All that being said, folks, workonyourgameuniversity.com. Again, have me as your coach, get access to our courses, get into our group program, the Inner Circle, all at workonyourgameuniversity.com. Link in the description. Work on your game. Dre all